Good day. This is a brief item analysis of Module 1 and Module 2 retake assessments for computer forensics, CSC 343. Overall, students did very much better on the retake, scoring an average of 4.63 out of 5. In many cases, they got the items completely correct. There were a few items that require review. One was a multiple choice item. You are tasked to establish a baseline record for a system that includes network criteria. Which of the options below is most relevant or useful given this forensic interest? Active session connections was the correct answer. A few students answered all outbound email. However, you're talking about a baseline record for network criteria. This is the network traffic that's occurring when nothing is running, nothing is loaded. So email wouldn't be in process there. When you're turning on debug verbose logging of all activity, that's typically for troubleshooting. That's not baseline activity. And then DNS records in the active cache. If the system has just been started up and it's not running any applications, you wouldn't have any DNS records in there. But you might have active sessions for applications that open. They had a trial software that was installed and then removed, but the firewall is still open and there are still active components of that trial application, trial software. So active session connections would be interesting to capture for detail. We have two multiple answer questions. Quality forensic programs include, choose all that apply. Components of a quality forensic program include the interpretation of forensic outcomes to inform consensus for incident stakeholders, and remediation and quality assurance that validates preventive changes. That's quality assurance, QA, that validates preventive changes are effective. Right? If you say specialized legal counsel by lawyers who were trained in EU, the European Union data protection requirements, there may not be any component of e-commerce that engages Europe. So that's just that's not something you'd see in every forensic program. And then encryption of all data used, stored, or transmitted by an organization. That's encryption, as a general rule, has a lot of operational overhead. It creates quite a performance hit. You would want to encrypt the sensitive data, but not everything. So to encrypt all data stored, used, or transmitted by an organization, that's not a part of a quality forensic program. In fact, encrypting all data would tend to stymie or thwart a lot of forensic program efforts, depending on the forensic analysis that needs to be conducted on the data that might be captured, if the encryption keys are not available, and so on. So those answer choices are not the best. The last multiple answer question, discovered artifact scenario. A digital evidence specialist is hired to assist local IT staff who have been trained as digital evidence first responders. So the IT staff are also incident handlers. The DES is to perform an informal, routine investigation that will assess the nature of data compromise on a system owned by a corporation. The DES soon discovers irrefutable and verifiable artifacts that now require, under law, a formal collection of exhibits for criminal action. However, in an odd turn of events, the DES is unexpectedly directed by company tech support to drop the matter, since their own logs reveal no malfeasance and that no data was changed or deleted. Based on this scenario, select any statement below that is appropriate and accurate. The three answers that are are best to select are: the investigation is now formal and must include a sworn affidavit to first secure a warrant. A line of authority must clearly be established to ensure proper disposition of the case, and education, awareness, and training program at this company is warranted. What we have is a scenario where the local IT staff is supposed to, the outcome is supposed to be completely different. The fact that the IT staff is supposedly trained as incident handlers and digital evidence first responders, but all of a sudden the outcome shows there are no verifiable facts. Basically that there's no log of any malfeasance. It tells you that the IT staff and the incident handlers are not the level of training or the value of the training they received is questionable. Because if there's verifiable artifacts that show criminal action, exhibits for criminal action are now required under law, but the logs don't trap any significant malicious or unauthorized actions, it tells you that the IT staff doesn't have their logs set correctly. They're not tracking, they're not monitoring, they're not doing the things they're supposed to do. The last two possibilities: human resources can submit artifacts and logs to law enforcement per local policy. Human resources wouldn't know how to interpret the technical scope of what needs to be collected. And the last one is forensic work can remain informal so long as the CEO signs off to prevent loss of productivity. When you have formal criminal action that's now required, there is no signature a CEO can give you that says, oh, hey, but we have work to do, so we can just keep this informal. The fact that that legal, criminal action has to be pursued. The CEO may be the person who's in charge of the company that hired you, but he doesn't get a right to sign off of something that's criminal and say, well, we're just gonna keep this informal. We're gonna keep this under the rug. Those are not good options. Well, that concludes the last item for review on the Module 1 retake. In Module 2, when students completed this retake, essentially students scored an average of 4.89 out of a possible 5 points. Most items, there were 4 items here that require review. The first item we'd like to review in the second assessment, Tempest is recommended. So this is a multiple choice question. It is recommended that Tempest measures be used for high security forensic investigations. So this is where classified information, very sensitive. Select the following statements related to Tempest that is accurate. Tempest shields a device or system from remote signals used to access or corrupt the data. It's typical. Sometimes a Tempest hardened room is often called a skiff, or it could be called a Faraday cage. But basically, there's a metal shielding around the area, the work area, so that basically somebody can't queue up a cell phone signal or a Wi-Fi signal and remotely access or corrupt the data. That's the most important issue. This fake acronym, temporal erasure, that's not what Tempest means, even though the capital letters match. And yeah, it's not a concern if a device or system is powered off. Is a concern if it's in the sleep mode. A device can be powered off and it can be woken up with what's called a wake-up packet. So being powered off doesn't help. fact that it's this last choice is irrelevant for any system data stored or transmitted via optical means, fiber, CD, or DVD. If a device is activated with a remote signal, there could be a CD or a DVD with sensitive information that somebody remotely accesses that would give them, inside information about what's going on with the investigation, or what the scope of investigation would find. That's not the kind of information that you'd want somebody to get their hands on. So that's not an accurate statement. Any digital information on a system is important, regardless of the format it takes. The fact that DVD and optical is not affected by Tempest directly doesn't mean that the information that's stored in that media could be used to compromise the integrity of the investigation. Okay, we have a multiple answer, a multiple choice, and a multiple answer. According to the textbook authors, the following are disadvantages of using GUI-based commercial forensic tool suites. Such forensic tool options incur excessive resource requirements. That is true. They're very expensive. The commercial ones do. Create tool dependencies and reduce versatility. That is true also if you're locked into one platform or another. Oftentimes you can't just use the tools universally or selected tools universally. A lot of times you have to use them in combination. The other two answer choices that were not good options were produce results that may not stand up to scrutiny. If legal action results, commercial GUI-based forensic tool suites produce output that's, there's been plenty of legal precedent where it's acceptable in a court of law. So that's not a good answer choice. Eliminate the need to learn an older OS and are easy to use. If you have a GUI-based commercial forensic tool suite, but you're dealing with systems that are older, you still have to know your way around the operating system in order to effectively use some of those tools. So that's not a good answer, even though you have a snazzy, expensive tool suite. That doesn't mean that you're off the hook in terms of understanding older firmware, older operating systems, or older applications. This multiple choice item. DEFR forensic specialist will have a different scope of interest than the DES. Select the statement below that best represents this difference. A DEFR specialist will conduct forensic activities primarily to balance the they first and foremost want to avoid taking any actions that would compromise digital evidence. So they are going to be concerned about balancing the preservation of digital evidence, but they also are primarily focused on keeping the wheels of the business going. Incident handling is about damage control and recovery so that operations can continue. So there's overlap between the DEFR and the DES, and that they're both concerned with preservation of digital evidence. But that's as far as it goes. The DES is interested with the need for thorough and deep analysis of hidden data. So the DES is going to be more concerned about this, not the DEFR. So this answer choice is not good. Balance critical operation of essential equipment with the need to prosecute those who violate acceptable use. Acceptable use is a policy. It has to do not with criminal. You don't have to prosecute people who are violating acceptable use policy because it's not a law. It's not written in stone, and it's not a criminal code. It's the policies and procedures of a business, and an employee agrees to use them in an acceptable manner. The most that could happen would be human resources actions like suspensions, demotions, terminations, that kind of thing. balance security with intrusion detection to ensure both detection and protection. That has less to do with the DEFR. That has more to do with network forensics, and that's a specialty area. So that's just a bogus answer. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with DEFRs. So the fact that they're balancing security with intrusion detection to ensure both detection and protection, that's just effective use of an IDS. That's not. That has little to do. That has more to do with the IT shop and how they configure their infrastructure, and less to do with the scope of activity that's typical for an incident handler versus a DES. So, to put this another way, this is an operational technical issue that's established long before any incident handling or forensic investigation begins, and it doesn't have anything to do with the scope of interest for either of these two types of professionals. This concludes our review of the items. This outcome is exceptional. Mastery learning students are really doing well on these assessment items, and most are getting the correct answers. So looks like the retakes did their job. And as long as the other areas where there are gaps in concepts are reviewed, we would expect the cumulative exam scores to be really strong. This concludes our session. Good luck on your exam.